Hello, and today I would like to talk a little bit about patterns to help you memorize your major and your minor scales. Um, a lot of times I have students that ask, I want to play these solos, I want to play these solos. How do I memorize my scales? And the easiest way that I have them do it is just a simple pattern that in which only one note changes, one finger changes. And this pattern deals with 3 notes per string. You've seen it a lot of places, but at least understanding it and memorizing the pattern is something that I've had a lot of students have trouble with. So just to break it down, what we're going to do is just a simple 1, 2, pinky. All right, now I want you to use your middle finger on this because when we move through the scale, you'll see. So we're going to start off with your two bottom strings, your E and your A, with just a 1, 2, pinky. 1, 2, pinky. Same thing, both strings. All right. Now what changes on your middle 2 strings is that your first finger comes in, and that's all it changes. You're going to continue using your middle finger and your pinky. All right. So what you have so far: one pattern, 2 strings. Next pattern, 2 more strings. Alright, now for your top 2 strings, your B and your E, you're going to go back to your initial pattern. But this note right here, in this case it's a D, it repeats. Okay? But it's a good thing to know that it repeats, so the more notes you know on your fretboard, the better off you'll be. So when you're going to back to your top 2 notes, top 2 strings, you play the same pattern. Now, here's your root, here's where you started. This would be in the key of G. But keep in mind that since you have a high E and a low E, the notes are the same on each. So later on when we talk about modes, keep in mind that these 2 notes are also in the scale. And it makes it a little bit easier to memorize the pattern, especially when you realize that 4 strings out of 6 all have the same pattern. Jump the middle 2. All right, so you put it all together. Repeated note, root, but notes that are also in there. Go up to your third, help you with your arpeggios. Anyway, all right, so that's the easiest way that I have found for my students to learn the major scale. It's just that simple one little pattern using 3 fingers, first, middle, pinky, with only the adjustment in your first finger. All right, after you go past that and you start to look at the idea of a minor scale, it's a little bit more complicated than the major scale as far as the fact that only one note moves, one finger moves, but you still have the idea of 2-string patterns, fragments. All right, so if you're going to start with the first one, let's stay in G for this. All right, now the difference when you build a minor scale, your natural minor scale, you have a flat 3, flat 6, flat 7. And later on we'll talk more about understanding intervals and how that's all useful for you. But just to learn the pattern and get the notes underneath your fingers, it's just a simple. And once again, we're going to go for this stretch in between 1 and 2. All right, just to help you memorize the pattern. 2-string fragment, the E and the A both have the exact same thing. You're bringing in and using your third finger instead of your pinky. That's the only difference. Now, when you go to your middle 2 strings, it's once again 2-string fragment. You're going to go back to your initial 1, 2 pinky. Okay, so far, 2 patterns, 4 strings. Now, here it kind of changes up. You can take this same 3-note pattern that you're working on right here in these middle strings and shift it up 1 string. Because of the way the B is tuned, you have to make the adjustment. And there it is. So you can use those 2 patterns with the 1 fret adjustment and end on your root right there. But like I said earlier with the major scale, this string, the E and the E, the same thing, so why not use the same pattern for both? Makes it a little bit easier, especially when you're starting to learn modes and you use these 2 for later on. Okay? But because of the shift on your B string, you only use 2 notes per this pattern, or like before, you get a repeated note. And that's okay to help you learn the pattern. So once again, you're going to have two fragments, two patterns to help you learn all of the strings. But you just have to memorize where the actual pattern changes. Major, it's a little bit easier. You just bring your middle finger in for the middle 2 strings, or your first finger in for the middle 2 strings. For the minor, it changes a little bit, but once you understand that E and E have to use the same pattern, maybe it gets a little bit easier for you. So once again, to recap, major scale, first finger in, repeated note, all right, and always practice up and down in the scales just to make sure you both train your ear and your fingers. Okay, and then now for the minor. Flat 3, flat 6, there's your first pattern. Middle strings, your initial pattern, 1, 2, 4. Here's your shift. Here's your repeated note. That's your root. All right, and then you're going to finish the phrase to match your low E. All right, and those are that I have found the 2 easiest patterns to use for actually memorizing the major and minor scales. Keep in mind that wherever you start is your root. That's what names the scale. It's what makes a G minor, an A minor, and A minor is where you start. Knowing the notes on your fretboard is a very useful thing. But that should help you. All right, good luck.